This video was created using Gemini Notebook to generate audio overview versions of an article titled What a Cruel Game Life Is, which I Quite Beef, or Moku-Gyuu in Japanese, originally posted on my blog. Quiet Beef on October 13, 2020. Since the primary experience is listening to the audio, the visual component is intentionally simple, featuring footage that doesn't hold specific narrative significance. While I have edited in relevant images from time to time, missing them won't cause any issues with understanding the content. Please feel free to engage with it however you prefer, whether by watching, listening, or both. The original article was inspired by a video from the YouTube channel, Sayo-Nara Kon-Katsu Channel, titled Matchmaking, Is It Impossible for a Man in His 50s to Find a Wife for the First Time? Encountering the quirky profile of a never-married man in his 50s seeking a partner reminded me of 3 colleagues with abnormal, problematic behavior I had worked with at a Japanese company in Manhattan. While I initially thought they fit that description perfectly, I later realized, wait, upon reflection, this isn't just an issue unique to never-married men in their 50s. The content unfolds like a journey through Quiet Beef's mind, tracing the path from that initial thought to broader reflections on aging and the nuisance of the elderly, *rogue*, themes that confront us all as the final challenges of life. If you have the time and aren't in a rush, would you like to join me in retracing this journey?
Imagine for a second, just picture this. You're playing your absolute favorite video game.
Okay, I'm with you.
Right. And you've been playing this specific game for, I don't know, maybe decades. You know the maps completely by heart.
Yeah, you know all the cheat codes, the shortcuts.
Exactly. You know exactly which button combos to hit to get the high score. You've spent years grinding, leveling up, and you're just, well, you're feeling genuinely untouchable.
Like you've totally mastered the mechanics of the world.
Right. But then, right around the time your character hits, say, level 40 or 50, you start noticing something really strange. You're suddenly losing.
Wait, losing? Like out of nowhere?
Terribly, out of nowhere. You tried the exact same button combinations that used to win you the game.
Yeah.
You know, the combos that worked perfectly for the last 30 levels, but now, for some reason, they're actually penalized.
Oh, wow. That sounds frustrating.
It is. The screen flashes red. The NPCs start actively avoiding you or like reacting with total hostility. And the thing is, you haven't changed how you play at all.
So your execution is flawless, but only based on the old rules.
Exactly. But somehow your character is just failing every single mission.
Man, that would be incredibly disorienting. Because, I mean, from your perspective, the interface looks identical, right?
Yeah, exactly.
The graphics haven't changed. The controller in your hands feels exactly the same. But the underlying physics of the game, the invisible rules dictating how you're even allowed to interact with the world, how, gravity works, how the dialogue trees resolve, it's all been completely rewritten while you were asleep.
Which is terrifying.
Right. And the most terrifying part of this whole scenario, no one actually sent you the patch notes.
Oh, that is the worst part. Nobody tapped you on the shoulder to say, hey, just so you know, the meta has completely changed.
Yeah, everything you relied on is now a liability.
Mm-hmm.
You're just left floundering.
Just getting increasingly angry at the machine, right? Convinced that the game itself is fundamentally broken rather than realizing that your strategy is entirely obsolete.
That is a rough place to be.
It really is. And that profound, deeply unsettling feeling, that sensation of the ground just shifting beneath your feet, that's exactly what we're exploring today.
I'm really excited for this one.
Yeah, we are taking a deep dive into a really fascinating, deeply reflective, and honestly, somewhat provocative blog post.
It's definitely provocative.
Right. It's titled What a Mean Game Life Is, and it's by an author who goes by the pen name Quiet Beef.
Great pen name, by the way.
It's so good. So Quiet Beef is a self-described married man in his 50s. And in this post, he's reacting to a YouTube video made by 2 female marriage consultants.
And they do not hold back.
Oh, they are basically venting. They're laying out the brutal, completely unvarnished reality of dealing with a very specific demographic, first-time marrying men in their 50s.
That's a very specific niche.
It is. And what unfolds in his reaction is this incredible, agonizing journey of self-reflection about aging, societal expectations, and the ultimate trap of cognitive inflexibility.
Yeah, but before we get into the weeds of these specific behaviors, we really need to establish a very clear boundary for you, the listener. This is so important.
Yes, absolutely. Set the stage.
The severe criticisms from these marriage consultants and, the specific cultural phenomenon of these first-time marrying men in their 50s, this is all strictly anchored in the domestic landscape of Japan.
Right. That is a crucial piece of context to keep in mind.
Exactly. because the dating culture they're discussing, it's often referred to as Kon-Katsu, or marriage hunting. It's a highly structured, intensely formalized, agency-driven system in Japan.
It's basically an entire industry, isn't it?
It is an industry. So the fashion references we're going to talk about, the specific societal expectations placed on men and women, the power dynamics, these are all uniquely Japanese.
Right.
We have to remember that the feelings of these marriage consultants, their real visceral reactions, and their scathing critiques are specifically about the domestic Japanese environment.
I'm really glad you brought that up because it completely frames everything we are about to discuss.
Yeah, it grounds it.
But, at the same time, while the specific manifestations like the suits they wear or the agencies they use, while those are deeply localized, the psychological takeaways.
Oh, they're universal.
Exactly. How human beings age, how we violently protect our fragile egos, how we gradually become isolated from society. Those aspects feel universally applicable.
Absolutely. We aren't just doing a postmortem on bad dates in Tokyo.
No, we're examining the human condition. So our mission today is to unpack these 6 brutal critiques leveled at these 50-something single men and to explore the author's surprising and frankly somewhat painful self-reflection.
And ultimately figure out what this means for anyone. Right.
Yes. No matter where you live or how old you are, what it means for anyone who is actively trying to avoid becoming a quote-unquote toxic presence as they age.
Which should be all of us.
Right. So, okay, let's unpack this. Let's look at the very first hurdle these consultants describe, which it centers entirely around physical presentation. And this is just impenetrable wall of stubbornness.
Yeah, this is where it all starts. The consultants highlight this deeply tragic social reality that basically sets the stage for everything else.
Which is?
Well, when you reach your 50s, particularly as a man who has achieved some level of, professional or financial stability, people simply stop correcting you.
Wow. Yeah, society just collectively decides to stop giving you feedback.
Exactly. Think about it. If a 25-year-old makes a social faux pas or wears an inappropriate outfit to a meeting, a mentor or a friend will usually pull them aside.
Right. They'll be like, hey, man, you can't really do that here.
Yeah, because there's an active investment in their growth.
Yeah.
People want to see them succeed. But by the time you're 50, people just assume the concrete has completely dried.
They figure, what's the point? He is who he is.
Exactly. The consultants actually note that they look at these men walking into their agency and they think, even if I tell him, he won't listen.
That is so bleak. To just be given up on immediately.
It is. Because it's simply too exhausting to choose the delicate words required for someone older who, demands respect. And the result of this silence is this intense, almost delusional self-satisfaction.
Right, because these men have lived for decades without anyone challenging their baseline operating system.
Yeah, which makes them entirely impenetrable to advice. They just bounce it right off.
And the source provides examples of this that are so awkward, they feel almost cinematic. Like you could picture it in a movie.
Oh, the suit example.
Yes. The consultants describe this specific man who comes in for a consultation. He's wealthy. He makes a great income. He's, ostensibly a catch on paper.
With great demographic profile.
Right. But he shows up wearing a suit that looks like it's at least 10 years old. And it's not just old, it's excessively baggy.
Like swimming in it.
It totally swallows him. It doesn't fit his current frame at all. So the consultant, whose literal job, by the way, is to help him find a partner.
Who he's paying.
Yes, paying a lot of money. She gently suggests, perhaps you could buy a new suit for your dates. Something more tailored.
And his reaction?
His reaction is not to pause and say, oh, does this not look good? No, his reaction is immediately aggressive.
Naturally.
He snaps back, I don't want a woman who judges a man by his appearance.
Man, what's so fascinating there is the defense mechanism at play.
How so?
Well, he is instantly framing his refusal to adapt as a stance of moral superiority.
Oh, I see. Like he's taking the high road.
Exactly. He isn't stubbornly clinging to an unflattering, outdated piece of clothing. No, in his mind, he is a romantic purist.
Seeking true love.
Right. True love that transcends the superficial material world.
Yeah.
He weaponizes this romantic ideal just to deflect the criticism.
That's a serious mental gymnastic routine right there.
It is. But beneath that moral grandstanding, it's just pure, unadulterated cognitive inflexibility. He literally cannot tolerate the idea that his presentation might be flawed.
And it isn't an isolated incident. There's another guy mentioned in the source also wearing a wildly oversized suit. The consultant tries a slightly different angle.
What does she say?
She asks, have you bought a new suit recently? And he just shuts the conversation down entirely. He says, I haven't bought one, but clothes have nothing to do with marriage hunting.
I mean, that is just a flat-out refusal to acknowledge the basic premise of the system he's participating in.
Literally a system based entirely on first impressions.
Right. And the consultants express this sheer exasperation, saying to each other, they won't even change a single shirt.
They can't even get to the inner advice, like how to hold a conversation, how to show empathy, because they literally cannot get past the wardrobe.
And this initial stubbornness, it almost always mutates into a secondary trait they identify, which is aggressive nitpicking.
Nitpicking, like complaining about the agency.
Yeah. Because these men refuse to be positioned as the quote-unquote student taking advice, they try to violently regain control of the dynamic.
Oh, they need to assert dominance over the consultant.
Exactly. So instead of listening, they aggressively point out minor, irrelevant contradictions. Like, they will scour the dating agency's rulebook to find a tiny discrepancy just to prove the consultant wrong on a technicality.
Wow. That sounds exhausting.
Or they'll latch onto the advice about the suit and twist it, aggressively demanding. So you're saying this agency is entirely about superficial looks then? Is that your official stance?
Just putting them constantly on the defensive.
Right. They interrupt constantly. They become high-handed.
Yeah.
They treat the consultation like a courtroom cross-examination that they're trying to win.
Completely forgetting that they are supposedly there to, prepare for a lifelong partnership.
Yeah, they completely miss the point. And the consultant's final verdict on this behavior is pretty brutal. They say these guys just end up being tiring old men.
Tiring old men, ouch. But, I was reading this and wondering why the baggy suits?
It's a great question.
Right. Why is that the specific hill these men are choosing to die on? They have money. They could literally buy a tailored suit tomorrow.
And they wouldn't even blink at the cost.
Exactly. And the blog author, Quiet Beef, he introduces this incredible cultural tangent that explains it perfectly.
Oh, the bubble era connection.
Yes. He traces this specific aesthetic back to Japan's bubble era.
Yeah, if we connect this to the bigger picture, the Japanese economic bubble of the late 1980s and very early 1990s is basically the defining sociological context for this entire generation.
It was a crazy time, right?
Oh, unprecedented.
Yeah.
It was a time of almost dizzying wealth, excess, and just massive national confidence. And the young men of that specific era, the men who are now in their 50s, sitting in these consultation rooms, they were wearing what were famously called soft suits.
Soft suits, what exactly does that look like?
So they were highly structured, but intentionally fashionably oversized, usually double-breasted. If you picture the quintessential 1980s corporate power suit, but draped very loosely over the frame, that was the absolute pinnacle of fashion.
Oh, got it. Like the Armani-style drape from the 80s movies?
Exactly. It was the uniform of the young, the successful, and the wealthy. It signaled to everyone that you were part of the booming economy.
And then, as the author points out, the economic bubble just abruptly bursts. The 90s roll in, and the culture shifts dramatically toward like skater and street fashion.
Right. Suddenly it's all baggy jeans, oversized check shirts, really loose silhouettes.
So the guys who spent their formative youth transitioning between these two massive cultural eras, they had this specific aesthetic permanently burned into their retina.
It just got locked in.
Right. In their internal dictionary, baggy equals cool, oversized equals masculine, relaxed, wealthy.
Yeah.
And so 30 years later, you see these 50-year-old men showing up to high-stakes romantic encounters in what the author describes as low-rise bootcut jeans and a massive check shirt.
It acts as a sartorial time capsule. And the insight Quiet Beef offers here is actually really profound.
What does he say?
He suggests that human beings have a powerful tendency to drag their youth into their old age. They become frozen in the timeline of their absolute peak.
Oh, man, that makes so much sense.
Right. Think about when these men felt the most vibrant, the most attractive, the most relevant to the culture around them. It was the bubble era.
So they unconsciously locked down their aesthetic and their worldview to match that exact moment.
Yes. When they put on that oversized suit, they aren't just putting on old clothes. They're putting on the armor of their past glory.
Wow.
They're trying to wrap themselves in a time when they were at the center of the universe, and they are demanding that the modern world recognize them as that 25-year-old titan.
I'm thinking about this like a software update, like, is this really just about bad fashion, or is the suit a proxy for their entire worldview?
It's definitely a proxy.
Right. It's like finding a computer that's still running Windows 95.
Yeah.
You look at the screen and you think, wow, that interface is really ugly and clunky.
Yeah.
But the aesthetic isn't the actual problem.
No, the aesthetic is just a symptom.
Exactly. The real danger is that if you try to plug a modern USB drive into a Windows 95 machine, it fundamentally cannot interface. It lacks the internal drivers to understand modern inputs.
I love that analogy. It's so accurate.
These men's social operating systems haven't had a security patch since, like, 1992.
Yeah.
So when a modern independent woman in 2026 tries to communicate her needs to them, the system doesn't just misunderstand, it returns a fatal error code.
It just crashes. That analogy captures the severity of the issue perfectly. The refusal to update the wardrobe is merely the outward visible symptom of a total internal refusal to update the mind.
Because changing a shirt shouldn't be that hard.
Exactly. If you cannot accept the relatively painless superficial advice to change your shirt, you are signaling that you possess zero capacity for compromise.
And marriage is like 90% compromise.
At least. Merging your life with another human being requires incredible flexibility, requires letting go of your ego, adapting your habits, and constantly negotiating shared realities.
So if you fight to the death over a baggy suit,
You are categorically incapable of marriage.
which is actually backed up by a really fascinating data point from the consultants. The source notes that there is a massive night and day difference between first-time marrying men in their 50s and divorced or remarried men in their 50s.
This is such a telling detail.
Right. The guys who have been married before, the consultants say they literally don't have this problem. They listen to the advice. They wear clothes that fit. They're adaptable.
Because the divorced men have experienced the feedback loop of intimate partnership.
The feedback loop.
Yeah, if you've been married, you spent years, perhaps decades, having your rough edges forcibly sanded down by the presence of another human being.
Because you can't escape them.
Exactly. A spouse acts as a mirror that you literally cannot look away from. They will tell you, you look ridiculous in that suit, or you can't talk to the waiter like that. It's embarrassing.
Oh, definitely.
The domestic landscape provides this continuous, unavoidable, often incredibly painful feedback. But a man who has lived alone for 50 years, he's never had his operating system crash because of a conflict with a partner's operating system.
He's just been running in safe mode for 30 years.
Yes. He has lived in a perfectly curated echo chamber of his own preferences. The divorced men have been forcibly updated through conflict. The single men haven't.
That lack of an update explains so much, because when you have a completely outdated operating system, it doesn't just crash when you try to install a new wardrobe. It crashes the moment you try to run any modern social interaction.
Which brings us to the next cluster of traits the consultants identify.
Right, the social blind spots. The source outlines these as being unpopular, tactless, and stingy or complainers.
And this is where the behavior transitions from being sadly funny to genuinely tragic, and in some cases, wildly offensive.
Totally. The tragedy really begins with what the author describes as the evolution of the unpopular old man. Both the consultants and Quiet Baif note a very specific biological and social turning point, which is age 40.
Age 40 is the cliff.
Yeah. They observe that if you reach age 40 without continuously polishing your social skills, like if you haven't learned how to hold a dynamic conversation or how to show genuine curiosity about others.
Or how to navigate social spaces without just relying on your job title.
Exactly. If you haven't done that, you are effectively doomed. By 50, the concrete has set completely.
And it manifests in this paralyzing lack of confidence, which they try to mask as apathy or superiority.
Like pretending they just don't care.
Right. The source points out that these men are utterly terrified of planning a simple date because they genuinely don't know what restaurants are currently considered good.
Because they've been out of the loop for decades.
Exactly. They've been out of the social loop for so long they don't even know where to begin.
Now, the healthy response in that situation would be to access vulnerability, right?
A healthy person would look at the consultant and say, look, I am completely out of my depth here. I haven't dated in 20 years. Where should I take her? What's popular right now?
Just admit you don't know.
Yes, but asking for help requires admitting a deficit. It requires taking off the armor. And these men have zero capacity for vulnerability.
So what do?
Instead of asking, they stubbornly make a terrible choice in total isolation. The date is a disaster, the woman rejects them, and their status as an isolated, unpopular older man is cemented even further.
It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. And that fear of vulnerability completely short-circuits their empathy, which leads to the tactlessness.
Oh, the tactlessness.
I have to be honest, reading the source material here, I physically cringed. Like, I had to read these quotes twice because I couldn't believe an adult human being actually formed these words and pushed them out of their mouth in a romantic setting.
The consultants recount these interactions with a mixture of trauma and sheer disbelief.
I don't blame them.
They describe these men as having completely lost the ability to sugarcoat anything. The internal filter, the mechanism that usually stands between a fleeting, inappropriate thought and vocalizing it.
Yeah.
It is entirely disintegrated. It's a complete lack of social delicacy.
Okay, so imagine sitting across from someone on a first date. You're trying to make a good impression, and this 50-something man looks at the woman and casually remarks, "Wow, you can get married even if you're fat."
I mean, it is an act of social violence. There is no other way to describe it.
Who says that? Or take this other example. Against all odds, a man from this demographic actually lands a date with a woman who is 15 years younger than him.
Which, in the context of this marriage agency system, is a massive, almost unheard of victory for him.
Huge victory. He should be thrilled. He should be on his absolute best behavior. And what does he do? He sits down, looks at her, and immediately starts complaining that her build is too slender.
He actually says out loud to the woman he's trying to court, "I want someone with bigger breasts."
It's mind-boggling.
We have to analyze the profound self-sabotage happening in that moment. He achieves the exact thing he claims to want a younger partner, and his immediate instinct is to demean her.
Why, though? Why ruin it?
It's a preemptive strike. By criticizing her body instantly, he establishes dominance. He makes her the one who is lacking, which protects him from the terrifying possibility that she might judge him.
Oh, wow. So it's all about beating her to the punch.
Exactly. I'll reject you before you can reject me.
That is so dark. But let's sit with this next quote for a moment because it is the ultimate shocker from the source.
Okay, lay on us.
So a 50-something man walks into the marriage consultation agency for the very first time. He's presumably scheduled this appointment, put on his clothes, traveled to the office. He sits down across from the consultant. And exactly 3 seconds into the meeting, 3 seconds,
Wow.
he leans in and asks, "I'm a virgin, is that okay?"
That moment is just staggering.
3 seconds.
If we unpack the psychology of what just happened in that room, the consultant isn't shocked merely by the biological fact of his virginity.
Right, that's not the issue.
The shock comes from the sheer, uncalibrated weight of the delivery. He takes his deepest, most profound, likely most painful personal insecurity, and he drops it like a live grenade onto a complete stranger 3 seconds after saying hello.
It's like he has zero concept of progressive disclosure.
None. Normal human relationships are built on gradually revealing layers of yourself as trust is established. He just dumps the darkest part of his basement onto the front porch immediately.
But why? Is it a test? Is he saying, like, accept the most difficult thing about me right now or I'm not playing?
I think it is exactly that. It's a defense mechanism born of absolute terror.
Really?
Yeah. He is so afraid of being rejected for this fact later, after he has invested hope and emotion, that he forces the rejection to happen immediately.
He wants to get it over with.
He wants to be rejected before he has to try. It demonstrates a tragic, almost total inability to read a room, to understand interpersonal boundaries, or to pace a social interaction.
He's been alone with this secret for so long that he has lost the ability to weigh how it affects others.
Precisely.
And, when they aren't dropping intimate grenades, they're engaging in this bizarre performative bragging.
Oh, the role play stuff.
Yeah. The source mentions a guy who asked the consultant out of nowhere, "I get really nervous when I'm with beautiful women. How about you?"
Like they're bros at a bar?
Right. The consultant is sitting there, totally baffled, thinking, why are you acting like you're a celebrity in a room full of supermodels? You are sitting in an office and you haven't even gone on a single date yet.
It's pure fantasy role play. He is trying to establish a persona of a worldly, desirable man, but because he lacks the actual experience, the performance is entirely hollow and just transparent to anyone observing it.
Which bleeds into the pettiness, right? The stinginess and the complaining. These are men who, according to the profile, often have significant financial resources.
They're well off.
But the source details how they will flat out refuse to buy a new shirt because the specific department store the consultant recommended doesn't offer reward points.
Over reward points.
Yes. Or if an application they send to a woman is rejected, which, by the way, happens constantly, they throw a tantrum and threaten to sue the dating agency for a refund, treating human rejection as a breach of contract.
Suing because someone said no to a date. That is wild.
Or they refuse to arrive 10 minutes early for a date to secure a nice seat in a hotel lobby, arguing that it's beneath them or too much effort.
To understand this, we really have to look past the terrible, infuriating behavior and ask what is actually fueling it.
Okay, what's driving this?
The source suggests that they attack to hide their own weaknesses, and psychologically that tracks perfectly. These men are profoundly, deeply insecure.
Really? Even with all the bragging?
Especially because of it. They are entering a marketplace, the modern marriage hunting scene, where they know, on a subconscious level, they are fundamentally unequipped.
Like bringing a knife to a gunfight.
Exactly. Their youth is gone, their social skills are atrophied. In the traditional masculine culture they were raised in, vulnerability was likely suppressed from a very young age.
Right. You do not show weakness.
You do not admit you don't know what you are doing.
So all that suppressed terror has to find an outlet somewhere.
Exactly. It mutates. The fear comes out as arrogance. The vulnerability comes out as treating shop staff like garbage. The insecurity comes out as insulting the physical appearance of the woman sitting across from you.
Because if you're on the offensive, you can't be hurt.
If you reject the agency's rules first, if you criticize the woman first, if you threaten the lawsuit first, they can't hurt you. You are in control. It is a desperate, flailing, preemptive strike against a world that utterly terrifies them.
Man. But that raises a massive contradiction.
What's that?
Well, if they are so terrified of rejection, if they're so insecure that they have to preemptively attack the women they are meeting, why on earth are they aiming so impossibly high?
Oh, yes.
If you know you're struggling, you usually lower the difficulty setting on the game, right? But these men are doing the exact opposite. Which brings us to the delusion of age and what the source calls the impossible dream.
And this is the point where the consultant's tone shifts from exhausted annoyance to absolute sheer anger and amazement.
They just lose their minds over this part.
Because despite possessing all the traits we just discussed, despite being stubborn, nitpicking, unpopular, tactless, and aggressively petty, these 50-something men march into the agency and demand to be matched with 24 or 25-year-old women.
And the source is very specific here. They aren't just asking for any women in their 20s.
Oh, no.
They demand model-like young women. They want absolute peak physical perfection.
When the consultants attempt to gently introduce reality.
Which has to be a fun conversation.
Right. When they pull out the demographic data, when they explain what 25-year-old women are actually looking for, when they outline the sheer mathematical impossibility of this match occurring, the men offer what they believe is a magnanimous concession.
Right. Their compromise, delivered with total sincerity, is, fine, I'll settle for early 30s.
The audacity is just astounding, and it's deeply insulting to the women participating in the agency.
Totally.
The author, Quiet Beef, observes this dynamic and makes a very sharp point. He notes that these men, particularly the highly educated, wealthy professionals, the lawyers, the doctors, the corporate executives, are not actually looking for a life partner.
What are they looking for then?
They are treating the marriage agency like a mail-order catalog to find playmates. They operate under the delusion that their accrued financial capital and corporate status can simply purchase youth and beauty.
Like it's just a transaction.
Exactly. They completely ignore the fact that a modern marriage requires emotional capital, a currency in which they are entirely bankrupt.
And the reality check provided by the consultants in the source material is incredibly bleak. They state for the record that in all their years running this agency, processing countless men in this demographic, they have only seen exactly one successful first-time marriage for a 50-something man.
Just one.
Just one. And the bride in that singular success story, she was 48.
That is the statistical reality of the market.
But these men are still stubbornly holding out for 24.
This specific delusion forces us to view the dating market as the ultimate ruthless mirror of society. Think about the environments these men usually inhabit.
Okay, so like the corporate world.
Yes. In the professional world, in corporate Japan, these men are heavily insulated by hierarchy. Their age, their tenure, and their job title demand absolute deference.
Right. A 50-year-old manager is bowed to simply because he is a 50-year-old manager.
He can be rude, he can be tactless, he can wear an ill-fitting suit, and his subordinates will still laugh at his jokes and pour his drinks. The corporate structure artificially props up his ego.
But the dating market strips all of that away.
Completely. The dating market is a pure peer-to-peer negotiation of human value. It does not care about your org chart.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
These men expect their financial or professional status to act as a cheat code, overriding their total lack of personal growth. But the Japanese dating market, particularly for modern, financially independent women, strictly punishes this lack of emotional intelligence.
It's because they have options now.
Exactly. These women are evaluating the whole package. The conversational skills, the empathy, the ability to adapt, the emotional warmth. And these men are failing on every single metric except maybe their bank account, which in 2026 is no longer enough to buy a human being's compliance.
It's a clash of eras. It's the traditional patriarchal expectations smashing headfirst into modern social reality. And while male entitlement exists everywhere, this highly formalized structure where a man can literally sit at a desk and demand a 24-year-old from a catalog, and the consultant has to mathematically prove to him why he can't have one, is a uniquely Japanese manifestation of this delusion.
And that precise realization is what makes the author's reaction so incredibly compelling.
Quiet Beef's reaction.
Yeah, because halfway through the blog post, Quiet Beef executes this hard pivot. He moves away from just bashing these delusional clients, and he turns the mirror entirely onto himself.
Which is pretty brave.
It is. He is reading this laundry list of terrible, toxic traits, nodding along, thinking, yes, these guys are absolute monsters. He even mentions that he has spent the last 3 years in his professional life getting into bitter arguments and interpersonal conflicts with men exactly like this.
He hates them.
He does, but then the boomerang comes back and hits him right between the eyes.
It's a moment of profound, almost chilling self-awareness. He writes that while he's cheering on the consultants for exposing these flaws, he suddenly feels this cold sweat of recognition.
He realizes, wait a minute, I do this too.
Yes, I have these exact traits. He points out that, yes, he might be married, he might have cleared that specific societal hurdle, but he recognizes the stubbornness in himself.
He recognizes the nitpicking.
He recognizes the arrogance and the refusal to listen. The critique of the 50-something single man suddenly expands into a critique of the 50-something human.
And he explicitly broadens the scope to ensure the reader knows no one is safe. He notes that this rot of complacency isn't isolated to 50-something men in Japan.
Right. Women can develop these exact traits. Younger people can exhibit this rigid stubbornness too.
Because the underlying mechanism, the refusal to adapt, and the demand that the world bend to your outdated preferences is a universal trap.
This realization rattles him so much that he goes on what he self-deprecatingly calls a wild, rambling, galaxy brain speculation.
I love that phrase.
He starts desperately searching for a reason why this happens. He wonders if these behaviors are actually symptoms of something clinical, like he throws out the idea of developmental disorders, or what he terms age-related higher brain dysfunction.
Now, he's very careful to clarify that he isn't a doctor. He isn't making a medical diagnosis.
Right, this is just his mind frantically trying to make sense of how human beings can become so thoroughly, hopelessly socially broken.
It is a fascinating intellectual leap. He is trying to pathologize the stubbornness because it seems so aggressively irrational to him.
Yeah.
And he introduces a really dark but compelling philosophical theory, the 40-year expiration date.
Okay, break this down for us.
He suggests that human beings inherently possess troublesome, selfish, difficult parts of their nature. We are all fundamentally flawed.
Sure.
But youth, vitality, and the powerful biological and social drive to mate, find a career, and integrate into a community, all of that actively suppresses those troublesome parts. We learn to mask our worst traits to survive.
We play nice because we have to.
Exactly. But he theorizes that this socially acceptable humanity, our natural, effortless ability to adapt to others, only lasts on autopilot until about age 40.
It's like a manufacturer's warranty that just expires. You hit 40, the warranty voids, and the machinery starts breaking down.
Precisely. And he argues that after 40, without active, conscious, exhausting intervention, we naturally hurtle toward becoming what he harshly calls monsters.
Yes.
And he uses a very specific, evocative Japanese real estate term to describe this state, jikobuken.
Oh, this was the detail that completely blew my mind. We have to dive into jikobuken. Break down what that actually means.
So jikobuken translates directly to stigmatized properties or accident properties.
Okay.
In the Japanese real estate market, if a property has a dark or tragic history, if someone died there unnaturally, if there was a murder, a suicide, a fire, or even if it's located next to a graveyard or a cult headquarters, it is legally required by law to be designated as a jikobuken.
Wow.
Because of the intense social and spiritual stigma attached to that space, the rent plummets. It becomes notoriously difficult to find tenants. Nobody wants to live there. The space is considered tainted.
So he is applying a real estate law about haunted or tainted apartments to the human soul.
Exactly. The author is using this as a metaphor for the aging human personality. If you stop growing, if you let your bitterness and stubbornness accumulate, your personality becomes an accident property.
Your social value plummets.
People sense the toxicity radiating off of you, and they instinctively avoid you. You become a space where joy, connection, and potential go to die.
That is such a vivid image.
You are technically still standing, like the apartment building, but nobody wants to be inside you.
I think the metaphor is incredibly powerful, but I have to say, I found myself pushing back pretty hard on his disorder speculation.
How come?
Well, isn't blaming this on higher brain dysfunction or a biological expiration date just letting people off the hook? If I just say, well, my prefrontal cortex is aging, my biological drive to mate is gone, therefore I literally cannot help being a jerk to the waiter, that feels like a massive philosophical cop-out.
It does.
It excuses the bad behavior as inevitable biology rather than a failure of personal character.
That is a very astute critique. If it's just biology, then we have no agency, and we are all doomed to become accident properties.
Right.
But I think Quiet Beef realizes the danger of that fatalism, which is why he immediately pivots from the biological speculation to a highly actionable, rigorous philosophy.
So he doesn't just give up.
He doesn't just throw his hands up and surrender to the decay. He introduces a concrete, demanding solution.
Yes, and this is where the deep dive gets incredibly inspiring. We move into the concept of earning forgiveness and redefining what it means to be toxic.
It's a huge shift in perspective.
The author has this brutal moment of honesty in the mirror. He admits, older men are, generally speaking, visually unappealing. He literally uses the word bad. Our physical attractiveness fades. The natural, effortless grace of youth evaporates.
It's just a fact of aging.
So he asks, if society is no longer going to give you a free pass based on your youthful potential, your energy, or your physical beauty, how do you survive?
And his answer is uncompromising.
It really is. You must train. You must train so rigorously that people look at your aging, flawed exterior and think, he looks like a monster, but he's actually a really good guy.
The concept of training is paramount to his philosophy here, and he uses brilliant, relatable analogies to explain this mindset.
Like the school one.
Yeah, think about the realm of education or sports. If you want to get into a top-tier university, you don't just show up at the admissions office, bang on the door, and demand they let you in because you feel you possess inherent value.
That would never work.
You don't try to flatter or bully the admissions officer without having the grades to back it up.
Yeah.
You study. You put in the grueling, invisible hours of work to meet their high standards.
Or his middle school soccer analogy, which I love.
That's a great one, too.
If you want to be a starter on the team, you don't just walk onto the pitch during a game and demand the ball.
Right.
You run drills. You do the wind sprints. You humbly learn from the older, better players. You train to acquire the skills necessary to be chosen.
It's about earning your place in the ecosystem. You cannot just coast on the mere fact of your existence. And the author argues that older people must apply this exact same athletic, academic mindset to their social lives. You cannot demand respect simply because you have been breathing for 50 years. You must train to be accepted by society. You must train to be, as he specifically translates it, forgiven.
Let's talk about that word, forgiven, because it tripped me up at first. It's a heavy translation.
It sounds a bit loaded.
Yeah. It sounds like you're apologizing for being alive or begging for mercy.
It requires a deeper cultural and philosophical analysis. To be forgiven in this specific context is not about being subservient.
Okay, what is it about?
It is not about groveling or diminishing yourself. It is about proving that you still actively belong to the human race. Quiet Beef explicitly states that earning respect isn't about forcing others to humble themselves before you, which is what the men in the marriage agency are trying to do.
Right, demanding the 24-year-old.
Earning respect means society looks at your flaws, looks at your physical decline, looks at your inevitable quirks, and decides, we will tolerate this. We will embrace this person. We will forgive their rough edges because of the immense visible effort they're putting in to connect with us.
You earn the right to occupy space.
Exactly. And the absolute minimum requirement to run alongside the active generations, to not be left behind as an accident property, is the continuous, often painful struggle to grow.
Which perfectly sets up his redefinition of a very specific, very loaded Japanese cultural term, rugai.
Rugai is a word you hear often in Japanese media. It literally translates to toxic elderly, or the harm caused by the old.
It's usually a pretty harsh insult.
Traditionally, it refers to older politicians, corporate chairmen, or patriarchs who refuse to step down, hoard power, and make disastrous decisions because they are completely out of touch with modern reality. It's a demographic insult.
But the author does something brilliant here. He redefines it entirely. He removes age from the equation.
Yes, he states that rugai has nothing to do with chronological age. He defines a rugai simply as a human who has stopped growing.
That reframing changes everything. That means if you are 25 years old and you refuse to adapt to new information, if you refuse to listen to feedback, if you refuse to change your mind when presented with evidence, you are rugai.
Precisely. You are acting as a toxic agent in your environment. If you stop growing, you become a pollutant to the social ecosystem.
So how do we stop it?
The only known antidote to becoming rugai is active, relentless empathy. It requires you to share what the Japanese call the air of the current society.
Breathing the same air.
You have to breathe the same air as the youth. You have to willingly struggle through the joy and the pain alongside others. You have to actively care about what younger people are experiencing. You have to read the room, and you have to constantly update your internal software.
Regardless of your biological age, your gender, your tax bracket, or whether you're happily married or painfully single.
The exact moment you decide, I am finished, I know enough, I don't need to change anymore, you sign the paperwork to become an accident property.
Wow. So what does this all mean for you, the person listening to this deep dive right now?
It applies to everyone.
It does. You might be 25 or 35 or 40. You might be listening to this on a commute thinking, well, this is a fascinating sociological study of stubborn 50-year-old men in Japan, but it doesn't apply to me. I don't wear a baggy 1980s suit.
But the trap is still waiting for you.
It's waiting for all of us. Complacency is the most universal human condition. The moment you think you have your life completely figured out, the moment you stop actively seeking critical feedback, the moment you assume your worldview is the only valid one, you are stepping onto the path of becoming rugai.
Because growth isn't some passive state of grace that just washes over you over time.
It is an active, daily, sometimes exhausting defense against becoming socially obsolete.
It is a profound, paradigm-shifting perspective. Western society, in particular, often tells us that youth is the designated time for learning, struggling, and failing, and that old age is the time for resting on your laurels and passively demanding respect.
Like you've earned your rest.
But this source flips that narrative on its head. It argues that youth gives you a biological free pass to make mistakes, but old age demands rigorous, conscious, daily training just to remain palatable to the people around you.
You don't get to rest.
No. The social maintenance required actually increases as you age.
That brings us to the bleak but deeply honest conclusion of the author's post. After laying out this incredible, stirring manifesto for personal growth and treating social empathy like a martial art to avoid becoming a monster,
Quiet Beef ends on a somewhat melancholic sigh.
he does. He says, look, even if we vow to fight it, even if we train every single day to not become rugai, even if we listen and adapt, aging is still a fundamentally cruel process.
It's unavoidable.
The prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for complex behavior, personality expression, empathy, and moderating our social interactions, it inevitably degrades.
Is a biological reality.
Despite our best, most valiant efforts to remain engaged and empathetic, we might all eventually end up as accident properties in the end. As he says in his final haunting line, life is a mean game.
It is a profoundly mean game. The rules change without warning. The controller eventually breaks in your hands, your reflexes slow down, and the screen will inevitably fade to black.
But the struggle to keep playing well, to keep adapting to the new rules, to keep trying to be a good co-op partner to the people playing alongside you, that struggle is the only thing that gives the game any meaning.
I couldn't agree more.
And that leaves us with a final, provocative thought to take away and chew on.
Let's hear it.
We spend our entire youth and middle age trying desperately to build a static identity. We try to figure out exactly who we are. We lock in our musical preferences, our fashion style, our political views, our moral absolutes.
We build this fortress of identity because it makes us feel secure in a chaotic world.
But what if the very act of solidifying our identity is the trap? What if the desire to be finished is exactly what turns us into the stubborn, nitpicking monster nobody wants to be around?
That's a scary thought.
Is true maturity actually about remaining perpetually unfinished? Is the ultimate goal of life not to finally figure yourself out, but to remain a perpetual work in progress?
That is the ultimate paradox of human development. The only way to truly win the game of life is to realize that your character should never, ever stop leveling up, even when the underlying code of the game starts to glitch.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the human condition. Keep updating your internal software. Keep listening to the painful feedback. Embrace the struggle of remaining unfinished. And whatever you do, please, don't let your mind get stuck in a baggy suit. We'll catch you on the next one.
If you enjoyed this, smash the like button, give this video some hype to help it reach more people, and hit subscribe so you never miss an upload. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next video.